Welcome to Malpractice Podcast.
So, are you ready to get started?
I'm so ready. And I want to start with a question for you.
Okay.
When you have not finished prepping your story and we're about to record, does it ever feel to you like a book report that you forgot to do for school?
I always get so anxious. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I would rather call in sick than not complete this story.
No, same. Literally same.
No. Yeah, but I get the sentiment is real.
Welcome to our weekly book report podcast.
Period. That's so accurate.
Right?
I'm Jess.
My name is Sydney.
And we panic.
And this is Malpractice. And we panic about our book reports.
That's it. That's the tweet.
Welcome. We hope you love them.
Yeah, I do get that.
Okay. Thank you. Someone gets me.
I get you.
I knew it was you.
Yeah. If it's anyone, it's me.
If it's anyone, it's you. It's not Eric. He's like, you're an alien. Speaking of which, someone posted a really nice review on our Apple podcast, and I'm going to read it.
Let me see. I want to see it.
By someone named Karina, smiley face. And it says, this is a very informative podcast that is done in such an entertaining way. It's clear that the hosts are great friends. Oh,
we are.
Because everything feels so natural and fun. They make topics light and digestible, 5 stars all around. Thank you so much, Karina. We are good friends. That's not a PR tactic.
That's not a shtick. That's real.
It's the real.
Thank you. How nice.
Thank you, Karina.
You the best.
For anyone else, if it's your first time listening, welcome. We are actually friends in real life, and we talk to each other about just a variety of things, so welcome.
This morning, I run with Corey, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I get her ready, and I get myself mentally prepared, and I open the door, and it's fucking storming outside.
Yeah, it's gross.
Sometimes she is never heard of her, will not be wet. This was one of those times.
Okay.
I had to get an umbrella for my dog. But she has wild energy.
I respect that energy. That's how I feel after.
Yeah.
Like a third coffee for the day.
Yeah. But it's third coffee, no poop.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta poop if you're drinking coffee. Eric, the morning of our half marathon, Eric was like, so I drink an espresso. If I'm gonna run in the morning, I drink an espresso before I run because that's the only reason I'm awake and alive. And Eric was like, I think I'm going to drink an espresso before I run. He's never had one before.
No. Did he do it?
No. I was like, here's the thing, Eric. You will shit your pants.
100% shit your pants.
It is not a joke. It's not a game. You'll shit your pants. You can't do it.
Because he doesn't drink coffee.
Never. Never drinks caffeine. Never drinks coffee.
Which is whatever.
Yeah. It does reduce our coffee bill in our house because I only have to pay for pods for myself.
One psychopath's amount. Yeah.
That's correct.
I'm like,
I
you
do
have
drink
enough.
a significant amount.
I only have to pay for the amount that feeds 50 people.
I have a problem. I recognize. You also have a problem.
One man's problem is another man's pleasure.
You called me today and you were like, I have a headache. And I was like, oh, that sucks. You should take some aspirin or something.
Yeah.
And you were like, no, I'm going to drink an espresso.
Period. That's me.
Well,
put it on my tombstone.
It's a choice. It's a life choice.
That is me. I don't even care.
I understand it. Okay. You want to get into it?
Yeah. Here we go.
We'll see how far we get today, and it may be a 2-parter. Because my script is 10 pages long.
I feel like it's going to be a 2-party, and
Jess opened my notes, and she was like, what are you thinking? This is a 2-parter?
You know what, though? I think 2-parters,
yeah,
it's fine. Because in the middle, you can be like, and gotta pause. That's fine.
Yeah. So you clicked on it, so you already know. But today's episode is a super interesting, and I'm actually sorry to say this, it's an unsolved true crime case.
I was going to say the M word, but I wanted you to say what it was first.
Murder. Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah.
I'm sure many of our listeners are familiar with the consequences of this, even if they've never actually heard of the case itself. Today we're talking about the Tylenol Murders.
I've actually never heard of this until you mentioned it.
I am shook because every true crime podcast that I listen to has an episode, and that's why it took me so long to put this episode together, because I had to listen to 10 different podcast episodes.
I've never heard of this, so I'm
actually so excited. I think you're really, number one, I think you're gonna like this one. Number two, researching this I just had so much fun. I went down a total rabbit hole.
Yeah.
You're gonna like it. Okay. So have you ever opened a bottle of like over-the-counter medication like Tylenol or Advil or whatever, and there's like a safety seal on it that you have to either poke through or peel off?
Yeah.
So the Chicago Tylenol Murders are the reason that exists.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
3 people are dead, and another is in critical condition tonight.
One of the victims took the pills he bought to his home.
His brother and sister-in-law were so upset by his death that they went back to the house and took some Tylenol from the same bottle.
As the death toll hit 7, the terrifying randomness of the poisonings shocked the nation.
So I'm going to set the stage because it wasn't a super recent crime. I'm going to take you back to Chicago, Illinois in 1982.
Okay, but can we just say this?
Sure.
That is not that long ago.
Yeah.
And I say that because a bitch was born in 1991. And these young people be throwing around the 1900s.
It's rude. I don't like it.
I do not like that. Please stop doing it.
If you were born in the 2000s, please know that we are very sensitive about having been born in a different millennium than you.
100%. I will get my feelings hurt.
Okay, fair enough. So, 1982, same year as E.T.
Aw, phone home.
The Blues Brothers, the year after MTV was invented, which is crazy.
Okay.
The very first cell phones are being developed.
God, briefcases.
Right. Like those big-ass cell phones that are like, you have to hold two hands. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So things were really different and they were changing really fast. I also feel like
horrible makeup.
In the 80s, everyone was on drugs, right? Cocaine specifically.
Yeah.
Don't lie to me. No one lie.
I wasn't there.
So the hair was big, the colors were bright, weird time in America.
Very weird.
It's also in the time before consumer products like medications were sealed. So when you bought, this is so weird to someone our age, but at this time when you bought like over-the-counter medication, you just unscrewed the lid and there was a piece of cotton on top of it. There was no child-proof lid.
Mm-hmm.
There was no sealing. It was not in a box. It was straight up like in a glass bottle on a shelf.
I get even concerned when I open ice cream containers and there's not a sealed layer or a plastic.
There's never a sealed layer on a lot of ice cream containers.
Why isn't this sealed?
Do you remember a case like 2 years ago in Texas, I think, where a girl was going around the store licking ice cream?
It was like a TikTok trend or something.
Okay, just so everyone knows, that is
on social media.
That is a federal crime.
Yeah, and they caught her, but a lot of other people did it.
Like, you will get federally prosecuted.
But you know, a lot of ice cream companies started sealing their products.
Which makes sense.
As they should.
And that's basically what happened here. So, essentially, a case of medication tampering will go really wrong in Chicago, and then almost everything, even like milk being sealed, orange juice, hot dogs, like everything that is sealed now that we buy in stores was not sealed at this time.
Oh, God. They just wiling out. See?
Correct. And also, my real question is, how did anyone survive the 1980s?
How are we not all deceased?
It doesn't make sense to me. You could just open hot dogs in the store?
You shouldn't be opening hot dogs. Hot dogs are disgusting. I'm so sorry, Eric.
My husband loves hot dogs more than anyone in this whole world.
I know you love a hot dog.
Okay, for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about somehow, Tylenol is basically an over-the-counter pain medication or analgesic.
Oh my God, who would not know what Tylenol is?
Right. It's acetaminophen, essentially. Tylenol is the name brand that's owned by Johnson & Johnson. So it's produced by a subsidiary company of J&J.
I see.
But essentially all of that is under the umbrella of them.
Or, yeah. And I just get the store brand.
No, same.
Yeah.
So basically, if you've ever walked into a pharmacy, you've probably seen Tylenol or like its competitor on the shelves, acetaminophen, essentially. So in the 1980s, they didn't have quite as many options for over-the-counter drugs as we do now. Like, it was basically Tylenol or aspirin. There was no Aleve, there was no like gel capsules, like none of that existed.
Ugh, I love a gelled capsule. That is my preferred way to take a pill.
Same. And they also came around because of this.
Oh, well, shout out to gelled capsules. This podcast is brought to you by gelled capsules.
By Tylenol.
By gelled... Oh, I don't know if I want to sign my name onto that. They probably wild.
Yeah, we'll learn about it. But actually, Johnson & Johnson responded. One of the weird things about this is that they responded fairly well when their product was tampered with. We'll get into it. So,
oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Good for you guys.
In like an unprecedented pharmaceutical company move.
I mean, maybe they're just the
Say I'm
ones
wrong.
to be. Yeah, J&J all
Where's
the way.
the lie?
There's their
Yeah.
slogan.
Exactly. You're
I
welcome,
don't know.
Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah.
TM, we'll take our royalty check,
TM,
please.
yeah, just real fast.
Okay. So at this point in time, in the 1980s, Tylenol, J&J controlled about 35% of the over-the-counter
Pretty good amount.
pain reliever market. So like 1 out of every 3 drugs taken was Tylenol.
Yeah.
Everybody took it too. Like they took it for essentially whatever. People were like, acetaminophen,
Yeah.
new wonder drug. I can do whatever I want with it.
Yeah.
Headache, Tylenol. Fever, Tylenol. Trouble sleeping, you guessed it, Tylenol.
Does it help with sleeping?
Who knows? Probably not.
But they were taking it. Got
Because
it.
this was the 80s and people were like, whatever, drugs, perfect.
Yikes. Okay.
So that's the backdrop of today's case. And it was for that reason that when 12-year-old Mary Gellerman had a sore throat and runny nose on the morning of September 29th, 1982, in the Grove Village suburb right outside of Chicago, her parents gave her an extra-strength Tylenol capsule and told her she could stay home from her 7th grade classes that day.
Yeah.
So, pause there. Quick trigger warning, because in the next 5 minutes, we are going to talk about death and dying a lot.
We don't give that warning. Like last week, I probably should have given it the whole time.
Right.
Like 16 deaths.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if we should start, because I was like, oh no, I'm going to talk about a lot of people dying and like convulsing. It's not pretty. So, trigger warning, if you hate the sound of that.
If we're talking about murder, though.
Yeah, you did click on a murder episode of a podcast, but.
There will be murder here.
However, murder is coming. Trigger warning.
Yeah.
Okay. So Mary Kellerman, the 12-year-old's dad, said he heard his daughter basically go into the bathroom, close the door behind her, and then he hears something heavy like fall onto the floor. So he goes in to check on her. Her father finds her collapsed on the floor in a very bad state.
Like what?
So she's like convulsions, foaming at the mouth. She's starting to turn bright red.
Oh, no.
It's bad.
And
her dad finds her.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
It's horrifying. He picks his daughter up, rushes her to the hospital, and she was pronounced dead shortly after their arrival at around 9 a.m.
What?
So...
Oh, my God.
Yes.
How terrible.
Like, very shortly after taking
Tylenol
capsules, right?
Yeah.
So after they pronounced her death, the doctor started to theorize that it came on really quickly. She had no symptoms that make sense for this. Like, she just had a sore throat, right? She didn't really have anything necessarily that could be, that should have killed a normal, healthy 12-year-old, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they were like, well, maybe she had a stroke because it came on so quickly.
But why would she have had a stroke?
That's exactly right. So the diagnosis was pretty weird because she's a normal, healthy 12-year-old. Why would she have a stroke?
I'd be so mad if I was her parents and they were like,
right,
she had a stroke.
And part of the reason that this case ends up getting solved is because Mary Kellerman, her mother, knew someone in the medical examiner's office and was like, you need to get her an autopsy because this death was weird.
Oh, wow.
Like, our 12-year-old daughter should not have died. Find someone to do an autopsy. Okay.
Yeah.
So her...
Okay.
Yes,
Shout out to
friends with medical examination benefits.
I'm so serious.
Okay. Mary's body goes to the medical examiner. So that's how this, like, horrible day in U.S. history starts with a 7th grader essentially dying from unknown causes.
How terrible.
So by 9 o'clock in the morning, the Tylenol murders had claimed their first victim.
Aw. First.
Yes.
Aw.
Yes.
I know it's
I know.
murders with an S,
Yeah.
but this is not good.
It's going to keep getting worse. So just hang in there with me for a second. Next is this poor guy named Adam Janis. He's a 27-year-old postal worker, father of 2, lives in a Chicago suburb called Arlington Heights. In the morning, he's driving home from I think he was dropping his daughter off at school. That's what I read.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts to complain of chest pain, which even as a 27-year-old is like an alarming symptom.
Yes. Too young.
If you ever have chest pain, it is definitely worth
Immediately.
calling someone or doing something about it. Chest pain is not normal.
No.
And he essentially decides that because of this, he's going to take the day off. So he heads home, and as he's going home, he stops at a pharmacy, buys some extra strength Tylenol. He eats lunch, takes 2 of the capsules that he purchased at the drugstore, and very soon afterward, he stumbles into the kitchen where his wife is standing. He collapses onto the floor. She tries to wake him up. Nothing is working. She calls the paramedics. Depending on the source that you read or listen to, it's unclear to me, really, whether Adam arrived at the hospital and was pronounced dead when he got there, or if he was already dead by the time the paramedics arrived. So it was like fast. Either way, he died almost immediately after taking these 2 pills. But because he had taken the drug for chest pain, at this point, doctors are like, he probably had a heart attack. Even though he's 27, it's not completely impossible for someone of that age to have a heart attack.
Why are doctors saying probably?
Essentially, I think what you need is an autopsy to figure it out, and they're not doing these that quickly because these are in 2 separate counties.
Oh, so they're not going to connect these.
No one is even thinking about the fact at this point that these people have both taken Tylenol.
They're just like 2 separate things. One was a stroke, one was a heart attack.
Exactly. They're like, oh, we have a girl that died. Oh, we have a guy that died. We're not talking to each other yet.
Mm-hmm. But they had said the girl probably died of a stroke.
Yes. So they don't know yet.
Why isn't there a system where everyone everywhere can know everything all the time?
Right? That's every time I read like a court case or a proceeding like this or a criminal trial, I'm like,
Yeah.
Everyone should tell everyone everything.
Always.
It's just not how it works, especially not in the 80s.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Where you had to hold your cell phone with both hands.
Yeah, that is a fact.
Also, part of the problem here is that both people at this point are taking the Tylenol to deal with a symptom.
Yeah.
So the doctors are going to be focusing on the symptom
And not the
rather than what
Tylenol.
they took to help the symptom.
Because you take Tylenol for a symptom. You don't just take Tylenol.
Right. Because you already have some health concerns, so it muddies the water.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And you usually complain about those things to other people, and then they're relaying that to the medical professional.
And then that's what they're
So,
focusing
I see.
on. Like, the doctors may not
Yeah.
have even known they took Tylenol until later.
Right.
Yeah.
Because why would they?
Right. Because it's like, oh, I took an over-the-counter pain reliever. Like, people don't always remember to tell their doctor those kinds of things, especially when their loved one has just died. Like, you know.
Yeah. And plus, you wouldn't say, like, oh, they had a headache. They took Tylenol. You're just like, they had a headache earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So on the same day, 3:45 in the afternoon,
Oh, no.
there's a brand new mother named Mary Lynn Reiner who is 27 years old. She starts feeling dizzy and has a slight headache after giving birth to her 4th child just days before this. So she's got a headache. She's on her way back from the hospital after giving birth. And her husband is like, hey, why don't you take a Tylenol?
Oh, no. Guilt.
Yeah. Yeah, forever.
Immediately no.
Short time later, Mary takes the Tylenol, goes into the living room, collapses in front of her 8-year-old daughter, immediately becomes, super ill the same way that the other two were, rushed to the hospital, dies shortly after arrival.
Oh, yeah, that's... I
Yes.
don't like that.
No, they're all horrible.
Yeah.
When interviewed by Chicago Magazine, Mary's husband Ed said, "We were together for a long time. She was an excellent mother. We had 4 children. The baby was only a week old. I came home right after she had fallen on the floor. An ambulance came and rushed her to Central DuPage Hospital in Winfield. I'm not going to say a whole lot more than that."
Yeah, and I wouldn't either.
Fair. I will say I included a link for a page that has a memorial page for the Tylenol murder victims.
Oh, that's nice.
And each of them has a blurb about the victims. I highly recommend you go look at that and a picture of them and their families.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, after doing all this, I was like, it is essential that you focus on the victims, I think.
Yeah.
So, at about 4 p.m. the same day, this local woman who works in a telephone shop in nearby Lombard, Illinois, interesting tidbit here, and this will come back at the end of this episode, also happens to be the same town where Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was born.
Oh, God.
And lived and grew up. Okay, we'll come back to it. So this woman is named Mary McFarland. She develops a massive...
There's a lot of Marys.
There's a lot of Marys.
Is this like the most popular name?
I think it was. And also, can I be honest? I was like, maybe that's a connection. Has anybody ever thought of that? No, I don't think it is.
I don't think it is either,
still.
but I'm down
to theorize
agree
wildly.
with you. Yeah, I will. I will draw crazy conclusions is what I was
That's
gonna
perfect. That's welcome to the show. If this is your first time, we
Yeah.
love to draw crazy conclusions out of nowhere.
say. Yeah.
Okay. So Mary leaves her post she works at like a telephone company. 2022 vision, I don't know what that means. I think she sold the big ass rotary phones.
Oh, God, okay.
So she leaves her post at her desk. She walks to the back, grabs some Tylenol because she has a headache, and she takes them. Mary, the 31-year-old mother of 2, comes back, collapses inside the store. She would go on to pass away the next day a little after 3 a.m.
Oh, my gosh.
So Adam, the second person that we talked about, the first guy that we talked about, died around 3:15 p.m. the same day. As sad as Adam Janice's death was, and it was incredibly tragic, father of 2, 27 years old, obviously taken way before his time, it is about to get much harder for the Janice family.
Oh, no.
So Adam ends up into the hospital. The entire family rushes over to the hospital to be with each other, to be with him. He passes away. His family goes home back to Adam's house to start to mourn the loss of their loved one and figure things out. Okay?
Right.
At this point, Adam's younger brother Stanley, who's 25, and his wife Teresa, who was only 19. So they go back to his house. They're tired. They have headaches. It's been an incredibly long and sad day.
Right. It's been the longest day ever.
So they unknowingly go to Adam's medicine cabinet and both take 2 extra strength Tylenol.
Oh, Jesus.
Stanley comes back downstairs, collapses in front of the rest of the family. His eyes roll back into his head. He's foaming at the mouth. He's convulsing and turning red. Everyone runs over to check on Stanley, and Stanley's wife, Teresa, also collapses. Same symptoms.
Oh, my God. A nightmare.
Nightmare for this family. I cannot imagine. So Stanley and Teresa are both rushed to the hospital. Stanley dies at 8:15 p.m. His wife, Teresa, very sadly passes away the next morning around 9 a.m. So basically, everything that happened to Stanley happened to Teresa on a slight delay, like a short time later.
Right.
And doctors at this point are like, okay, these people were poisoned. They died of multi-system organ failure. Like something happened to these people that is not normal.
So they are noticing that.
They are noticing that. And at this point, it's 3 people who have been in the same home.
Right.
So they're starting to think that it's some kind of toxic exposure, but they don't know what it is.
Right. Well, that's good that they're thinking things.
Yes, exactly. So Dr. Kim, the medical director, and the doctor on call at the ICU where the Janice family is being brought in, says that he was going to get ready to leave around 5:30 p.m., and a nurse told him that the Janice family is coming back, and here's his quote. As I was putting on my blazer to leave around 5:30, a nurse told me that they were bringing the Janis family back. And I said, well, it's probably the parents because they were older and feeble and they may have been very upset.
Yeah, they went through a lot.
Yes, exactly. And the nurse said, no, it's his brother. And I had been talking to this like 6 foot tall, healthy guy. So I said, wait, what happened? Did he faint? And she said, they're doing CPR. They're working on his wife too.
Oh, he was probably like, oh, hell no.
Yes, he says that's when I took my blazer off.
Yeah, that's when you take off all blazers.
Exactly. So essentially, like, as soon as this point happens, everybody starts to realize that something is very, very wrong.
Right. Right.
Because three young, healthy people from the Janis family have now died in the same house, all after taking this bottle of Tylenol.
It's like something does not make sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
And 6 who have died total doing the same thing in and around the city of Chicago.
We don't know the extent of the contamination, so I think at this time it would be wise not to take extra strength Tylenol at all.
So a member of the Arlington Heights Fire Department calls up this badass nurse named Helen Jensen. She's like the badass of the story, okay?
Oh, okay. Love that.
We love Helen.
Welcome, Helen.
Welcome, Helen. We love you.
That'd be so cool if we interviewed Helen.
Literally, let's look her up.
Okay.
So this guy calls Helen, and he's like, there's something going on here. We don't know what it is. We had a death this morning, and now we brought in 2 more from the same house. They want a public health person here, and you're the only public health person I know.
That's funny.
So she literally ended up on this case, like, kind of by default, because she just knew a guy who knew a guy.
That's how a lot of things happen, actually.
Right, exactly, like, kind of by chance. But Helen is also a badass, so she drops everything, she heads to the hospital, and yeah, okay.
What?
I'm not going to spoil it.
No. Spoil it.
Essentially, Helen is going to be the one that solves the entire case.
Oh, we love Helen.
We love Helen. Okay. So 2 days later, Paula Jean Prince, a 35-year-old flight attendant, is found dead in her apartment after police respond to a request for a welfare check when her sister hadn't heard from her in a couple of days.
Oh, I bet it's about to get crazy because people that live alone that are taking Tylenol too.
Yes, that's exactly what happened to Paula.
Yeah.
So she was supposed to get dinner with her sister when she got back from her last route. On the day of her death, she had flown from Las Vegas back to O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. She had a long day of traveling, so she stopped at a Walgreens, got a bottle of extra strength Tylenol on her way home, takes 2 of the pills, died in her home the same day around 9:30 or 10 o'clock p.m. that night. The police find her body 2 days later in her home, and the bottle of Tylenol was still open on the bathroom counter.
Oh.
Paula is the 7th and final known victim of the Tylenol murders. So what's so hard about this is that it's not impossible that there were other deaths that were not connected to it.
Right.
But they think it's just these 7. Also, what I feel is especially awful about this case is how, like, young and wonderful all of the victims were.
Yeah.
And I'll include that link that I was talking about earlier. There's a website set up to remember all the victims, and there's a picture and a blurb of each of them, and that's what I've included on the last page of our little script here in case you want to see them. I think everyone should go check that out. It's a great way to kind of to pay your respects if you're interested in doing that. And I'll also include the Chicago Magazine article where each of the victims has a family member say something kind of lovely about them after their passing. So back to September 28th. At this point, the police have put a detective on the case.
That's good.
Because they're getting these reports and they're like, we got to do something about this.
Something's up. Yeah.
And this dude's name is Investigator Nick Pichos and the previously mentioned badass public health nurse Helen Jensen.
Oh, so they're together.
They're together now. They're working together.
And that's exactly what our friend, Special Agent
Bruce Sackman
said. Medical,
yes,
forensic personnel, specifically nurses, are the most important in like uncovering things like this.
Yes, 100%. And she goes back to the house with this investigator, and the guy is like looking around, but he's not really talking to anyone. And Helen Jensen goes back into the house and starts talking to the family. She's like, walk me through the day. I completely agree. If you haven't listened to our episode about medical serial killers with Bruce Sackman.
Go do it.
Number 1, go listen to that because he is a gem. Number 2, he's absolutely right that Helen basically cracked this case by like talking to the family and then talking to investigators. Like she was the go-between.
Nurses. He said it. He said it first.
So at this point, we're like 8 p.m. on the day of a lot of these deaths. They go back to the house together.
For the brother and the wife.
Yes.
Teresa and the brother, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And they're going back to Adam's house, which is where the rest of the Janus family is.
Got it. Okay. I would not go back in there.
Right. I would be really afraid that it was something in the house that they like didn't, like what if it was a gas leak or something? I mean,
Yeah.
The medical examiner knows that it's poisoning of some kind.
Right. Oh, you couldn't pay me.
I mean,
yeah.
Fair. Because what if it's in the air? Like, nobody knows at this point. Anyway, so they're brave and they're smart. Basically, they walk into the Janus home. Nothing is out of the ordinary. But Nurse Jensen, not your average cookie.
Period.
So she starts taking medication bottles out of the cabinet and counting them. She's literally pouring pills out, like, into her hand and counting them out. And she's like, okay, the newly opened bottle of extra-strength Tylenol is missing exactly 6 capsules.
So 3 people.
Meaning that the recommended dose is 2. So it makes sense that each of the deceased members took 2 of the capsules. So they go back to the hospital, and Jensen just happens to like take this bottle with her because she's a genius.
Literally.
So the investigator Pichos goes back to the Northwest Community ER where these patients had been sent, and he sets up a room full of policemen. Those are his words, policemen, not police people.
Oh.
Which was probably accurate at the time, right? In the 1980s, I'm guessing it was a room full of dudes.
We can hate him for it. We can hate on it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. Helen Jensen walks in. She slams the bottle down on the table, and she goes, "This is the cause." And she says, quote, "And of course, no one would believe me, so I stamped my feet."
And that's period.
They said, "Oh no, it couldn't be. It couldn't be." That's still a part of her quote. And no one wanted to believe her, especially since it's a room full of 1980s cops and doctors who are, I'm sure, like talking over her,
ignoring
and
her,
asking her to like bring them coffee or some shit, right?
Take notes.
Right. That ain't how Nurse Jensen rolls.
Mm-mm.
So she keeps fighting with them, and eventually Pichos is like, whatever. This is what I'm imagining he said. She didn't say he said this. I'm putting words in his mouth.
Got it.
I'm guessing he was like, if it'll shut you up,
yeah,
I'll call the paramedics who took Mary Kellerman to the hospital. And it just so happens that they had done a medical cabinet inventory and kept the Tylenol that she took.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, perfect, please bring that to the hospital. So the paramedics bring the Tylenol that Mary Kellerman, the 12-year-old, also took to the hospital.
Okay, connecting some dots. So we're connecting some dots.
Exactly.
We're proud of you.
The Chicago Magazine article actually interviews all of the people involved in this in order chronologically of like how things happened on the day of. It's super interesting. And I'll include that link.
Oh, that's cool.
At this point, on the medical side, Dr. Kim had this to say, and this is a quote. "I was pacing in my office. I kept going in a systemic way. What is likely, what is not likely. And all it came down to medically was cyanide. But I said, no, that can't be. Where is the exposure? The only way I could test this was to check the blood for cyanide, and I had never done that. I'd never heard of it."
Is Dr. Kim the guy who had taken off
Took off his blazer. Same guy.
Okay, got it. Blazer guy. Got it.
So Blazer Man, he's like, "I've never done this. I've never heard of it. We didn't do that in the hospital at the time. So someone, maybe another doctor I was talking to, told me about a lab that does those specialized tests, so I sent the blood samples away." Okay. This is at this point like early evening or late evening on the day of all these poisoning deaths. So he sends the samples away. By this point, the investigator Pichos has gotten his hands on several of the bottles, like 3 different bottles that the victims had taken capsules out of.
Yeah.
And he happens to notice that all of the control batch numbers on the side were exactly the same. So all of these pills are from the same batch. And that batch number is MC2880, just in case you want to know for your records at home.
I did want to know that. I always want to know batch bottle numbers.
I mean,
of Tylenol.
It's so important when you're doing your own investigations.
100%.
So at this point, Pichos calls the medical examiner, who is Emmy Donahue.
Okay.
And he's like, hey, bud, I'm going to need you to smell those pills. Smell them.
That's a weird thing to say. I wouldn't smell it.
I'd be like, you come up here and you smell them.
You smell it.
So-
I'm not smelling it.
This guy's like, whatever. He picks up the bottle. He starts pouring them out onto the table. And he said it had a really distinct smell. So he does it to the second bottle. And of course, they both smell like the very distinct smell of cyanide, which do you know what that is?
No. Thank God I don't know, and I never want to.
Okay. They say it smells like...
Do you know what a deathly smell is? No. I would be dead.
They say it smells like bitter almonds.
What is a bitter almond? What is bitter almond?
Have you ever had like an almond croissant?
Yeah.
Or smelled like almond extract?
Yeah.
That's what cyanide smells like.
Like almonds.
Yes, like almonds.
That's terrifying. So if you really wanted to hurt people, you could put cyanide in almonds.
Well, that would be the smart thing to do. Put it in your almond croissant and then bada bing, bada boom. No one can ever tell it's coming.
That's terrifying. We'll have to cut that for all the psychopaths who might be listening.
Oh yeah, please don't do that.
Don't do that.
This is us officially recommending that you not poison someone.
Not do it.
Also,
yeah.
I feel like it would be really hard to get your hands on cyanide. I could be wrong.
I don't know. With the way this country feels about guns, you could probably get cyanide pretty easy too.
Over the counter.
You could get it.
I mean, okay, so it smells like almonds. The other thing that's crazy is that only about 50% of the population can actually smell the scent of cyanide. So if investigator Pichos hadn't been in the group of people who could, this case honestly may never have been solved.
That's crazy.
Like if he had smelled it and gone like, oh, it smells like nothing.
Oh, that's cool. That's terrifying.
Would they ever have known? Probably not.
Literally.
Right. It's always like on a razor's edge with these cases. So this group of investigators is working all through the night to try and figure this all out. And when they get the lab reports back on the toxicology screens that they had done on the victim's blood, they get those back at around 1 a.m.
Okay.
And Dr. Kim was like making a joke about it. He was like, the toxicologist doesn't get out of bed. Like he's like a wait until Monday morning type of guy, and he got out of bed for this.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Why did he get out of bed for this?
Apparently, because they were like, this is a big problem. They know of at least 4 deaths at this point that have been attributed to this Tylenol, potentially.
There is an almond smell. Get out of bed,
Yes.
sir.
That's probably honestly what got him out of bed. They said it was the first time in Chicago district history that a toxicologist had done after-hour screens.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That's also alarming. Like,
Right.
get out of bed.
Correct. Just do your job. Anyway. So Dr. Kim gets the results back and basically finds that each of them had ingested between 100 and 1,000 times more than what would have been necessary to kill them.
And that's probably when it happened so fast, right?
Exactly, because they took it and almost immediately died, a lot of them.
Jeez.
And they were like crazy overdosed on, I mean, any amount of cyanide is not ideal, but they were like much more than would have been needed to kill them. So really quickly, the way that cyanide poisoning works is technically by a process called chemical asphyxiation. So basically, it attaches to this protein that sits on top of your red blood cells, and it stops your body's ability to use the oxygen carried by those cells. So your brain, your heart, all of your organs need oxygen, and it basically stops your body's ability to use oxygen, which is terrible.
Yeah.
Eventually, this leads to multiple system organ failure, brain damage, and eventually cardiac arrest. It's a fairly quick process, especially at this dosage, but it would be incredibly painful, and it's a horrible way to die.
Yeah.
Here's like a really gruesome fun fact. They actually stopped using cyanide ingestion as a method of executing people who got the death penalty because it was deemed too cruel by the courts.
Yeah. Great.
Right. I also mentioned earlier that a bunch of the victims had turned bright red. That's one of the symptoms because your red blood cells start to like accumulate in a weird way at the surface. And eventually the people who ingest and die from cyanide poisoning turn like a rusty red color, their whole body.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's a very distinctive manner of death, which I think is one of the ways that they came about. Like, it had to be cyanide.
Yeah.
The other thing to remember is that I said earlier that gel capsules were invented as a result of this. The types of pills that they were using at the time were the type that you can actually, like, there's two parts that you can pull apart. So they're not like hardened powder, the Advil that you take, or like gel capsules, which, like I said, hadn't been invented yet. You could pour the contents out, put something else in it, and close them. So they look like normal pills.
And for what purpose would you do this?
There's a ton of theories.
Unless to poison someone.
It was definitely intentional. 100% intentional. They have a lot of theories about why it might have happened. Within these bottles that they found that were contaminated, they found that each pill was filled with about 65 milligrams of potassium cyanide, which is a ton. So at this point, we have 7 different deaths in 5 different townships outside of and including Chicago. And at this point, people start talking about and reporting the fact to like the news, the media, the police.
Yeah.
Something is wrong with the Tylenol.
100%.
We're at about like 10 a.m. the day after the poisoning started. According to Nurse Jensen, she called the local police and she said, you've got to get the Tylenol off the shelves.
That bizarre mystery of Tylenol laced with cyanide still has not been solved tonight.
Investigators say they are searching for, quote, a madman.
People were terrorized. They didn't know what product they had in their home that could possibly be lethal if they ingested it.
Dun, dun, dun.
And that's where we're going to end part 1.
Part 1 is done. Wow. I'm excited to see what happens next. I'm not going to look at your notes.
I'm sorry to leave you guys with a cliffhanger.
No, we're not. We're not sorry.
Or we love a cliffhanger.
Entertainment.
This is the value of entertainment.
This is how they do TV shows.
Oh, it's true. It's absolutely true.
They be getting you.
So there's a cliffhanger.
Remember when you couldn't watch things back to back? You had to wait for the next episode.
Ew, yes, I remember that, and it was terrible.
Terrible.
Like, you had to wait a week between 2 episodes, although that's exactly what we're doing.
I know. A bit of the 90s
yeah,
for
I'm complaining about it, and we're doing it, yeah.
Yeah, we are doing it, but it's because we care.
We hope you like this one.
Yeah.
We hope you come back for the next one. Next week, we're going to talk about solving the case, all of the theories, the copycat incidents.
Stop spoiling. Stop.
We're going to talk about a ton of things. I won't spoil anything else. I'm just giving teasers.
No
teasers
teasing.
For coming back.
We already teased them with murder.
Murder.
They are teased.
Okay. We hope you feel sufficiently teased, and we'll see you next week.
Correct. Let us know if you have a recommendation. Send it to our email, malpracticepodcast@gmail.com. Double tap, the vibes. Subscribe where you listen.
Subscribe, rate us, leave us a review. If you want to be like Karina, who got her review read.
Oh, yeah. Our bestie for life.
Our new best friend.
Thank you very much.
Please feel free to leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast. We'll see you next week. And don't forget,
malpractice makes perfect.
Bye-bye. Bye.